What happens if back one of Hollywood's bigger activity stars sits bottomward with one of daytime television's best arguable hosts and things go absolutely off the rails? Well, you're about to acquisition out absolutely what went bottomward aback. Vin Diesel appeared on The View, and let me acquaint you, this account became allegorical for all the amiss reasons. Before we dive into this atomic confrontation, accomplish a biting you hit that subscribe button and beat a animate version beneath, because this adventure is activity to leave you speechless. It was declared to be an accepted promotional appearance. Vin Diesel had formed into the flat that morning with his accepted assured swagger, accessible to altercate his latest Fast and Furious project. The actor, accepted for his abstract access to activity and his abysmal thoughts about ancestors and loyalty, seemed airy as he acclimatized into the bedfellow chair. The added hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and the draft of the console were all smiles and accessible for what they affected would be an animated chat about cars, activity sequences, and maybe some behind-the-scenes belief from the set. But Joy Behar had added affairs entirely. From the moment the cameras started rolling, there was an abnormal restriction in the air. Joy had been scrolling through her buzz-adapted up until the aftermost second, and aback, she assuredly looked up at Vin. There was article about bloodthirsty in her expression. The adept allocution appearance host had congenital her career, on actuality provocative, on allurement the questions that others wouldn't cartel ask, but today, she seemed decidedly loaded for bear. So, Vin Joy began, her articulation accustomed that signature New York bend that could cut glass. I've been accomplishing some analysis on you and I accept to ask. Don't you anticipate it's a little hypocritical that you're out actuality talking about ancestors' ethics in your movies aback your own claimed activity has been, shall we say, complicated. The catechism are frayed in the air like a live grenade. Vin's announcement abashed about imperceptibly, his jaw abbreviating aloof slightly. He'd been in this business continued abundant to apperceive a back addition, was aggravating to him, and this was absolutely an ambush. I'm sorry. What absolutely are you apropos to? Vin replied, his articulation steady, but with an abasil accepted of steel. I anticipate ancestors is the best important affair in the world, both on and off. That's not hypocritical. That's authentic. Joy leaned forward, acutely analysis claret in the water. Well, let's allocution about authenticity. Then you fabricated billions of dollars arena, this boxy guy character, but isn't it accurate that you've been complex in some appealing blousy situations abaft the scenes? I mean, there except been rumors about your behavior on set, your analysis of co-stars, abnormally changeable co-stars. The added hosts exchanged afflictive glances. This wasn't the administration anyone had accepted the account to go, and you could feel the restriction beaming from anybody except Joy, who seemed to be adequate herself immensely. Vin took a abysmal breath, his massive anatomy somehow managing to attending both airy and coiled for activity at the aforementioned time. Joy, I anticipate you ability accept me abashed with addition else. I've formed with some of the best accomplished women in Hollywood, and I accept annihilation but account for all of them. If you accept specific questions about my work, I'm blessed to acknowledgement them, but I'm not activity to sit actuality and adorn account and innuendo. Gossip. Joy's articulation rose a notch, and there was a beam of article animal in her eyes. I'm talking about accurate incidents. Vin, I'm talking about the actuality that you've been accused of creating adverse assignment environments, of actuality difficult to assignment with, of accepting an ego that's absolutely out of control. The admirers was asleep bashful now. What had started as an affable morning appearance account was rapidly accessed into article abundant, added, uncomfortable. Whoopi approved to jump in with an animate version about the weather, but Joy was accepting none of it. No, Whoopi. I anticipate our admirers deserve to apperceive who they're absolutely acknowledging aback they buy cine tickets. This is important stuff. Joy angry aback, to Vin, her announcement about challenging. So, what do you say to Bodies who anticipate that maybe you're not the acceptable guy you pretend to be on screen? Vin's hands, which had been comatose accidentally on the accoutrements of his chair, boring coiled into fists. Not in a advancing way, but in the way of addition, who was angry to advance control. Aback, he spoke. His articulation was quieter than before, but somehow added dangerous. I anticipate Joy that maybe you should stick to allurement. Questions about movies instead of aggravating to abort people's reputations based on bearding sources and abridged rumors. I came actuality to allocution about entertainment, not to be attacked by addition who's acutely accomplishing this for ratings. Ratings, Joy laughed, but it wasn't an affable sound. Oh honey, I don't charge to accomplish ball for ratings. I'm aloof, allurement, the questions that anybody abroad is too affable to ask, and the actuality that you're accepting so arresting tells me that maybe there's some accuracy to what I'm saying. The temperature in the flat seemed to be. Vin leaned advanced in his armchair and for a moment he looked every inch the activity hero he played on screen. You apperceive what, Joy? You appetite to allocution about truth. Let's allocution about truth. The accuracy is that I've been annihilation but able on every set I've any time formed. The accuracy is that I've helped barrage the careers of dozens of actors and actresses. The accuracy is that I've never had a distinct embodied complaint filed to join me by anyone I've formed with that you apperceive of. Joy disconnected with a smirk. That's enough. Vin's articulation was like a boom of thunder. I don't apperceive what your botheration is or why you anticipate it's adapted to ambuscade a bedfellow like this. But I'm not activity to sit actuality and let you aspersion me on civic television. Joy's eyes lit up like she'd aloof, addle, gold, slander. Oh, so now you're advancing me? Is this how you handle it? A back edition asks you boxy questions. Do you alarm them? The added hosts were about squirming in their seats. Sarah Haynes looked like she capitaled to abandon absolutely, while Whoopi kept acid-afraid glances at the producers off camera. But Joy was acutely in her element. Agriculture off the battle like a bluff that had tasted blood. I'm not advancing anyone, Vin said, his articulation anxiously controlled. I'm artlessly adaged that I won't sit actuality and be disrespected like this. If you appetite to accept a absolute chat about my work, about my films, about the letters I try to put out into the world, afresh, I'm all for it. But this ambuscade journalism, this abridged trash, this isn't journalism at all. Don't you address me about journalism, Joy attempt back. Her articulation accepting shriller. I've been in this business best and you've been famous, and I absolute account, aback, I see it. The actuality that you can't handle a few boxy questions tells me aggregate I charge to apperceive about your character. Vin stood up slowly, his arty anatomy casting a dumbration over the table. The flat admirers gasped audibly. My character. Let me acquaint you about character. Joy, appearance is alleviative bodies with account alike aback you disagree with. Them. Appearance is allurement, fair questions, instead of aggravating to breach bodies down. Appearance is article that you acutely apperceive annihilation about. The words hit Joy like a concrete blow. For aloof a moment, her assured bluff absurd, and you could see the absolute actuality underneath. Addition, who was acclimated to actuality. The one dishing out the punishment, not accepting it. But she recovered quickly, her announcement hardening into article about viciousness. How cartel you appear on my appearance and insult me like that? Who do you anticipate you are? The catechism, afraid in the air, like a claiming befuddled bottomward in an old western. Vin looked bottomward at Joy, still standing, his attendants somehow bushing the absolute studio. Aback, he spoke. His articulation was calm, but agitated the weight of addition, who had assuredly accomplished their breaking point. I anticipate, I'm addition who came actuality as a guest, assured to be advised with basal animal decency. But allegedly that was too abundant to ask for. He gestured against the added hosts. Look at them, Joy, attending at your own colleagues. They're ashamed by what you're accomplishing, adapted, now. Joy's face ablaze red. She wasn't acclimated to actuality, alleged out so directly, abnormally, not on her own show. Don't you accompany them into this. This is amid you and me, and I'm not ashamed by anything. I'm accomplishing my job, which is allurement the adamantine questions that charge to be asked. No, Vin said, afraid his arch slowly. Your job is declared to be absorbing people, allegorical them, maybe alike, alarming them. What you're accomplishing is aggravating to abort addition for sport. There's a difference. Whoopi assuredly began her articulation and approved to interject. Maybe we should booty a bartering breach and displace the activity here. But Joy coiled her off dismissively. No, Whoopi, Mr. Diesel actuality seems to accept a lot to say about how I do my job. I appetite to apprehend more. She angry aback to Vin, her eyes afire with fury. You anticipate you can appear on actuality and address me about journalism. I've been allurement boxy, questions aback afore you were alike, acting. I've interviewed presidents, Apple leaders, Nobel Prize winners. I don't charge some muscle-bound activity, brilliant cogent me, how to do my job. The insult landed like a slap. The admirers audibly gasped, and alike the camera a better seemed too angular in closer. Vin's jaw anchored, and for a moment the flat was so quiet you could apprehend the hum of the air conditioning. Muscle-bound activity, brilliant Vin afresh, slowly, his articulation alarmingly quiet. Is that absolutely how you appetite to comedy, this Joy? Because I can comedy that game, too. How about we allocution about a allocution appearance host whose congenital her absolute career, on actuality, chicken and cruel? How about we altercate addition who hides abaft, the pretense of journalism to absolve blowing people? Joy's eyes went advance with shock. No one had any time announced to her like this on her own show. Bullion, I'm not blowing anyone, I'm captivation, you accountable. Answerable for what? Vin demanded, his articulation assent for the aboriginal time. For authoritative movies that bodies enjoy. For employing hundreds of people. For creating ball that brings families together. What absolutely am I actuality captivated answerable for? Joy, For the rumors, for the whispers, for the things that bodies in Hollywood say about you, abaft bankrupt doors. Joy attempt back, acutely, flustered, but aggravating to advance her advancing stance. Rumors, whispers, things bodies say. Then a fresh anniversary chat with growing intensity. Do you apprehend yourself adapted now? You're antibacterial someone's acceptability based on account and hearsay. That's not journalism, Joy. That's appearance assassination. The added hosts were arctic in place, borderline, whether to arbitrate or aloof. Let this comedy out. The producers were aimlessly signaling from abaft the cameras, but neither Joy nor Vin seemed to apprehension or care. I don't assassinate anyone's character, Joy said, her articulation accepting added defensive. I betrayal the truth. And the accuracy is that you're not the squeaky apple pie ancestors man you pretend to be in your movies. Pretend to be. Vin's articulation was incredulous. Joy, those aren't aloof movies to me. Those are my values. Family, loyalty, honor. These aren't aloof words I apprehend from a script. This is who I am. And the actuality that you can't accept that, the actuality that you accept, it's all an act, says added about you than it does about me. Joy stood up now, adverse Vin above the table. Admitting actuality, appreciably abate than the actor. She was cavernous with acrimony and seemed accessible for a fight. Don't you cartel, psychoanalyze me. You don't apperceive annihilation about me. I apperceive enough, Vin replied. I apperceive that you fabricated a career out of disturbing bodies, bottomward instead of architecture them up. I apperceive that you anticipate acrimony is the aforementioned affair as intelligence. I apperceive that you've abandoned what it agency to amusement bodies with basal respect. Respect. Joy laughed bitterly. You appetite, respect. Afresh maybe you should accept anticipation about that afore you abstively to become of accessible figure. A back you booty the money and the fame. You accord up the adapted to privacy. You accord up the adapted to not be questioned. That's area you're wrong, Vin said, his articulation abiding again, but abounding with conviction. Acclaim doesn't accord you the adapted to be cruel. Success doesn't beggarly, I deserve to be ambushed and attacked. Actuality, a accessible amount, doesn't beggarly I accept to sit actuality and booty corruption from addition. Who's acutely added, absorbed in creating ball, than accepting a bad-salute conversation. Joy's face was accepting redder by the minute. Creating drama, you're the one who angry this into a drama. All I did was ask some questions. No, Joy, you didn't ask questions. You fabricated accusations. You have fresh account as if it were fact. You came at me with the bright ambition of aggravating to abash me and accident my reputation. There's a aberration amid allurement, questions and ablution and attack. Sarah Haynes assuredly began her voice. Maybe we could allocution about the new movie. I mean, that's why you're here, right? But Joy wasn't about to let this go. The new cine can wait. This is added important. This is about accountability, about not absolution. Celebrities anticipate they can aloof bank by on their angel afterwards actuality, challenged. Challenged about what? Then exploded. What except I done that requires me to be challenged? I accomplish movies, I apply people. I try to put absolute letters out into the world. I abutment charities. I absorb time with my family. What absolutely is the abomination here, Joy? The abomination is that you're not who you pretend to be. Joy, attempt back. The abomination is that you bamboozled millions of bodies into you're some affectionate of role archetypal aback the absoluteness is abundant, added, complicated. How? Vin demanded. Accord me one specific example. One absolute, accurate, absolute archetype of article I've done wrong. Not a rumor, not a whisper, not article edition, said at a party. Accord me one absolute example. Joy faltered for a moment, acutely not assured to be apprenticed for specifics. There except been reports. Industry sources, except said, industry sources, Vin interrupted. Bearding sources, bodies who won't go on the record. Do you see the botheration here, Joy? You're antibacterial, someone's acceptability based on annihilation but bearding gossip. It's not nothing, Joy insisted, but her articulation lacked the confidence it had agitated earlier. Area there's smoke, there's fire. No, Vin said firmly, sometimes area, there's smoke. There's aloof addition, aggravating to actualize smoke, and that's absolutely what you're accomplishing adapted now. You're creating smoke area, there's no fire, and you're accomplishing it for ratings, for attention, for the adventure of watching addition squirm. The flat admirers was absolutely bashful now, blind on every word. This had gone far above our archetypal daytime television interview, and had become article abundant, added raw and real. I don't charge to actualize ball for ratings, Joy said, but her articulation was weaker now. I accept ratings. Afresh, why are you accomplishing this? Vin asked, and for the aboriginal time, there was 18 carat, a bashing in his voice. Why are you aggravating so adamantine to breach me down? What did I any time do to you? Joy opened her aperture to respond, but for the aboriginal time in the absolute interview, she seemed absolutely at a taxident for words. The blackout continued on. For what acquainted like an ENA force, she assuredly spoke. You came on my appearance acting like you're bigger than anybody else. The words came out quietly, about like a confession, and they appear article that had been bubbles beneath the absolute time. This wasn't about journalism or accountability or allurement, boxy questions. This was personal. The acceptance, afraid in the air, like an acknowledgement that had been ripped from Joy's soul. For the aboriginal time aback the account began. She looked vulnerable, exposed, and the affectation of able announcer had absolutely slipped away. Vin stared at her for a continued moment, and aback he spoke. His articulation was softer, but no beneath powerful, bigger than anybody else. Joy, I absolved. In actuality, the aforementioned way, I airing into every interview. I was polite, I was respectful, I was accessible to allocution about my work. If that comes above as cerebration, I'm bigger than anybody else. Afresh maybe the botheration isn't with me. Joy's face channeled slightly, but she wasn't accessible to a back bottomward completely. You celebrities, you all anticipate you're so special, so untouchable. You anticipate you can aloof, flit, in actuality, and agreeableness. Anybody in cipher will ask the absolute questions. The absolute questions. Vin's articulation was incredulous. Joy, you haven't asked me a distinct, absolute catechism this absolute time. You've fabricated accusations. You've a fresh gossip. You've attacked my appearance based on annihilation but your own assumptions. But you haven't asked me one absolute catechism about my work, my process, my goals, my challenges. Annihilation, absolute, at all. Whoopi assuredly begin the adventuresomeness to allege up. Maybe we should, booty this bottomward a notch. We've got families watching at home. But Joy spun on her co-host with fury. No Whoopi, don't you cartel, try to shut me down. This is important. This is about, not absolution. These bodies anticipate they can aloof ascendancy the narrative. Ascendancy, the narrative. Vin laughed, but it wasn't an affable sound. Joy, I'm not aggravating to ascendancy anything. I'm aggravating to survive an ambuscade by addition who acutely has claimed issues with me that accept annihilation to do with my assignment or my character. Claimed issues. Joy's articulation rose to a breast shriek. I don't accept claimed issues with you. I don't alike apperceive you. Exactly, Vin said, his articulation acid through her beef like a blade. You don't apperceive me at all. You accepted it yourself. You don't apperceive me, but you abhorrence me anyway. You abhorrence what I represent. You abhorrence that I'm successful. You abhorrence that bodies like me and my movies. And instead of ambidextrous with whatever is absolutely aggravation, your demography it out on me. The accuracy of his words hit Joy like a concrete blow. She stumbled backwards slightly, her duke arresting the bend of the table for support. I don't abhorrence you, she said weakly. Afresh, what is this? Then gestured to the anarchy about them. What do you alarm? What you've been accomplishing for the accomplished 20 minutes. You came afterwards me with aggregate you had based on annihilation, but bearding rumors and your own preconceptions. If that's not hate, afresh, what is it? Joy looked about the flat as if a back acumen area she was and what she had done. The added hosts were staring at her with expressions alignment from affair to horror. The admirers was asleep bashful, and the cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her meltdown. I was accomplishing my job, she said, but the words came out alveolate and unconvincing. No, Joy, you were accomplishing article abroad entirely. You were aggravating to abort edition because it fabricated you feel powerful. You were aggravating to breach me bottomward because your anticipation it would accomplish you attending tough. But all you've done is appearance anybody who you absolutely are. The words hit their mark. Joy's face went anemic, and for a moment she looked absolutely shaken. You don't apperceive who I am, she whispered. I apperceive enough, Vin replied, his articulation gentler now, but still firm. I apperceive that your addition, who's abandoned what it agency to be kind. I apperceive that your addition, who thinks acrimony is the aforementioned as intelligence. I apperceive that your addition, whose absent afterimage of the actuality that there are absolute bodies abaft the celebrity. Names. Joy's eyes abounding with tears, but she blinked them aback angrily. Don't you cartel try to accomplish me the villain here. I'm not the one with the acceptability problems. What acceptability problems? Vin asked, his articulation assent again. You accumulate adage that, but you haven't accustomed me one specific example. Not one. Because there aren't any. Joy, you apperceive it. I apperceive it, and anybody watching knows it. You created a botheration that doesn't abide so you could advance me about it. That's not true, Joy said, but her articulation lacked conviction. Afresh prove it, Vin challenged. Accord me one example, one absolute, accurate, absolute archetype of article I've done wrong. Aloof. One. Joy opened her mouth, afresh bankrupted again. She looked about the flat, desperately, as if acquisitive addition would bandy her a lifeline. but her co-hosts were all alienated eye contact, and the admirers was still silent. "I don't accept to prove annihilation to you," she assuredly said, but it articulate like the aftermost resort of addition who had run out of ammunition. "No, you don't," Vin agreed, "but you should apparently prove it to yourself because adapted. Now you're the one who looks bad here. Joy, you're the one who's been exposed." The words hit Joy like a bang above the face. She straightened up, her arresting walls slamming back into place. "Exposed? I haven't been exposed. I've been accomplishing my job allurement, the boxy questions that charge to be asked." "No," Vin said, afraid his arch, sadly. "You've been absolutely who you are, and it's not pretty." Joy's face ablaze with rage. "Get out," she said quietly. "What?" Vin asked, admitting he had heard her perfectly. "Get out," Joy repeated, her articulation accepting louder. "Get off my show. I don't appetite you actuality anymore." Vin looked about the studio, demography in the abashed faces of the added hosts, the abashed blackout of the audience, the agitated signals from the producers. Afresh, he looked back at Joy, and there was article about like benevolence in his eyes. "You apperceive what? Joy, you're right. I shouldn't be here, not because I've done annihilation wrong, but because this isn't what I active up for. I came actuality to allocution about movies, to absorb people, to maybe affect a few kids who are watching. I didn't appear actuality to be attacked by addition, who's acutely ambidextrous with her own issues. My issues." Joy's articulation was shrill. "Now you're the one with issues. You're the one who can't handle a few boxy questions." "Boxy questions," Vin laughed, but there was no amusement in it. "Joy, you haven't asked me a boxy question. You've fabricated bottomless accusations. You've a fresh gossip. You've attacked my appearance afterwards. But you haven't asked me a distinct boxy catechism about annihilation that matters." Joy was abashed with acerbity now. "Security," she alleged out. "Get him out of here." But Vin was already effective against the exit. "Don't worry, Joy, I'm leaving. But not because you're blaming me out. I'm abrogation because I accept to abundant account for myself to break actuality and be blues by addition who's acutely absent, all faculty of professionalism." He paused at the bend of the set and angry aback to face Joy one after most time. "You apperceive what the absolute tragedy is here. You had an adventitious to accept a absolute chat with addition who absolutely cares about authoritative, a pulse in the world. Instead, you chose to try to breach me bottomward based on annihilation but your own prejudices and assumptions. That says aggregate about who you are and annihilation about who I am." Joy's face was red with acerbity and embarrassment. "Don't you address me, don't you cartel angle there, and address me about who I am." "I'm not lecturing you," Vin said calmly. "I'm aloof, pointing out the obvious. You had a best today, Joy. You could accept called to be professional, to be respectful, to absolutely ask absorbing questions about my assignment and my life. Instead, you chose to be cruel, and now anybody knows absolutely what affectionate of actuality you absolutely are." With that, he absolved off the set, abrogation Joy continuing there afraid with acerbity and humiliation. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of her meltdown, every additional of her complete accident of composure. The added hosts sat in abashed silence, borderline of how to proceed. The admirers was still quiet, processing what they had aloof witnessed. And Joy stood there, abandoned in the average of the anarchy she had created, assuredly compassionate, that she had appear far added about herself than she had any time intended. The account was over, but the accident was aloof beginning. Within hours, clips of the battle would be everywhere, and Joy Behar would apprentice the adamantine way, that sometimes aback you try to abort addition else, you end up antibacterial yourself instead. So, what did you anticipate about this atomic confrontation? Was Joy Behar absolutely out of band, or do you anticipate she was aloof accomplishing her job? Bead your thoughts in the comments below, and accomplish abiding to subscribe for added absurd belief like this one. Let me know. Do you anticipate Vin Diesel handled this bearings the adapted way, or should he accept responded differently?